Somewhere along the lines, she'd been graced with the gift of seeing things not as they are, but for what they hid beneath. I guess seeing is not the right word. All that was before her was a line of overgrown trees, sloping toward a dirt roadway, and she recognized it as such. It was that sense she felt, the chill across her arms, the quickening of her heart. Much more than meets the eye lurks in the shadows. There was something in the way those trees hung forward, holding an unseen weight. The wind picked up in response to her thoughts. A slight nod offered her acknowledgement. Welcome to Mirrors, a collection of horrors, history, and hauntings. I'm your host, Gabby. Today, I'm taking you along with me to two of Pennsylvania's abandoned towns. I'm walking what once was the Graffiti Highway. If you look up Centralia, you'll likely see pictures of the Graffiti Highway. I feel like it brought life back to an abandoned town. And today it is destroyed. And you just walk over mounds of dirt and rocks. It looks post-apocalyptic in a lot of ways. It's like, nothing you've ever seen before. I think it's representative of Centralia as a town and the fact that it's just nothing now. And walking the highway, you can still catch glimpses of it, still see words and parts of graffiti that people left. I think that too is representative of the remnants of the lives that once lived here. And I still think it's pretty cool. We started out our day in Centralia, Pennsylvania, at the Graffiti Highway, which had become one of the most recognizable images of Centralia, drawing visitors from all over the world. It was an abandoned stretch of Route 61, which had been covered in graffiti, bringing color back to an otherwise bleak landscape. In 2020, it was covered with mounds of dirt and rocks in an effort to deter visitors. This podcast is typically devoted to haunted places. Centralia isn't necessarily connected to any ghost stories, although I would consider it to be haunted in a different sense. There's something to say about the air here, how it holds a kinetic energy that has nowhere to go. The echoes of lives once lived, now trapped in a near non-existent town that is unbelievably still and quiet. While primarily based on the Japanese horror game of the same name, the 2006 film Silent Hill drew inspiration from the near ghost town. Screenwriter Roger Avery researched Centralia, allowing the real-life story of a town abandoned to inform his aesthetics. Watching Silent Hill, seeing the barren landscapes and smoke curling from cracked highways, it's easy to see the similarities. It's those evocative images that keep me coming back to Centralia. In its prime, Centralia was just another small Pennsylvania community in the anthracite region. About 1,500 people lived there in the early 60s, with the economy fueled by the town's coal mines. The town sits atop one of the largest coal deposits in America, called the Mammoth Vein. In 2014, a time capsule buried in 1966 was opened, containing a miner's helmet, miner's lamp, and some coal. all of which goes to show Centralia's intended legacy. However, these objects now seem a bit ominous, as they tell a different story, the story of Centralia's destruction. For now, its legacy is Centralia, the town on fire. The Wall Street crash of 1929 caused the Lehigh Valley Coal Company to close some of its Centralia mines. This led to bootleg miners entering abandoned mines and pillar robbing, which means they were extracting coal from the pillars left to support the mine. Their actions unintentionally caused mine collapses, which would later prove to further complicate efforts to prevent and extinguish mine fires. In May of 1962, a trash fire in an abandoned mining pit ignited a coal seam, spreading to the mines. At first, the residents didn't seem to grasp the potential danger they were in. The realization didn't really hit until 1979, when a gas station owner measured the temperature in his underground containers, discovering they were more than 100 degrees above normal. Not long after, a 12-year-old boy named Todd Dombosk fell into a sinkhole that spontaneously opened beneath him. The sinkhole was 150 feet deep. Miraculously, Todd survived, having saved himself by grabbing onto a tree root. His 14-year-old cousin pulled him out, and this close call was enough to reveal the severity of the situation. Residents certainly didn't want to chance something like this happening again, especially since it could have so easily resulted in a death. I can imagine, for many, it was hard to even look at Centralia as a home after that. It wasn't safe, and the ground could literally open up beneath you at any time. The steam from the hole was tested, revealing it contained a lethal amount of carbon monoxide. When this happened, the Pennsylvania governor, along with a U.S. representative, were in town. The fire continued to burn, causing carbon monoxide levels to rise in local homes. In 1984, the Pennsylvania government stepped in to relocate people. The U.S. government had allocated $42 million to relocate residents. Most people left, and 500 buildings were destroyed. After failed attempts, they decided to just let the fire burn, rather than facing the costs and logistical complications of trying to extinguish it completely. By 1990, 62 people remained, deciding not to leave their homes. Pennsylvania intervened again in 1992, with Governor Bob Casey enacting eminent domain and more stringent policies to evacuate people. Centralia's zip code was eliminated, and most of the remaining buildings were demolished.
This is my third time visiting Centralia. I love coming here. I think it is such a fascinating place, especially as a photographer and like taking pictures and seeing how that energy translates to the camera. But each time I'm here and I'm walking around and exploring, I'm so struck by how there really is nothing. And that's kind of the point, obviously, is that there's really not much left here. If you visit the cemeteries, if you walk up the trails, you'll find little hints of civilization, of things left behind. And being here today, I've passed a few other people just because it's summer and it's a nice sunny day here. But even with that, even having those small details that you come across or seeing other people, there's still that air of just emptiness.
I'll be honest, there's not much to see in Centralia. My first visit, I focused solely on observation, taking it all in and navigating my way around the small town. Driving around town, you turn down paved roads, lined by overgrown trees, not really sure where you'll end up. Mostly you end up at dead ends. The town was not what I was expecting, although I'm not sure what I was expecting. The second time I went, I brought my camera, challenging myself to look more closely, to catch what my eyes had passed over the first time. Through my camera lens, I saw the town differently, capturing images, singular frames, that told the stories of a town abandoned. One of these images that I'll never forget was taken at the SS Peter and Paul Orthodox Cemetery, which in itself is hidden atop a small hill at the end of a discreet dirt roadway. The gates to the cemetery are locked. I found myself very focused on the gates. The cemetery appeared well cared for, so I'm sure people go in there from time to time. But I'm not sure if they allow guests to go in to visit the graves of their loved ones. During my visit, a wreath was left outside of the gates, in front of the stone wall barrier, which, to me, symbolized the distance from which former residents have been forced to view their past. Centralia was home to many different religious congregations. Faith was a central part of Centralia's community. A Bible was also left in the time capsule I mentioned earlier, along with local souvenirs. The St. Peter and Paul Russian Orthodox Church, which was the church connected to the cemetery, was in the line of fire. It was demolished in 1986 by the Centralia Mine Fire Acquisition Relocation Project. One of the last standing buildings in Centralia, the Assumption of the Blessed Virgin Mary, a Ukrainian Greek Catholic church, can be seen from across town, standing atop a hill, surrounded by overgrown trees. Apparently, church services are still held there, as the church hasn't been directly impacted by the fire. A lesser documented part of Centralia's history centers around the Molly Maguires, a secret society that originated in Ireland in the 1840s. They were dedicated to fighting against agricultural oppression in their country. The Pennsylvania Historical and Museum Commission website says, Irish immigrants who settled in the anthracite coal region of Pennsylvania may have arrived with the knowledge of the Molly Maguires' form of retributive justice. They were said to protect their members from oppressive mine owners, having assassinated 6 mine officials in the region. A mining engineer named Alexander Ray, who happens to be the founder of Centralia himself, was murdered while traveling in his buggy. 3 men were convicted and hanged in 1868 for the crime. The Molly Maguires have an air of mystery around them. Their existence as a coordinated group has never really been confirmed. However, their alleged activity was quite concentrated in Centralia during the 1860s, and their descendants apparently remained in the town until the 1980s. There's a local legend surrounding a man named Father Daniel Ignatius McDermott, the first Roman Catholic priest to live in Centralia. He was supposedly assaulted by 3 Molly Maguire members, causing him to curse the town for eternity. He said that, one day, the last remaining structure in Centralia would be the St. Ignatius Church, which has since been demolished. Who knows if there is any truth to the curse, although it's an interesting element to the story, considering Centralia's fate.
So we're driving down the main stretch in Centralia, and I don't know, when you're here, it's hard to not think of all of the people that had full and established lives in Centralia. I mean, these streets were probably lined with houses, and now it's just overtaken by nature again. There are a few houses of residents that still live here, but for the most part, it is just trees.
The mine fire eventually spread to a neighboring town, ironically named Burnsville, which lies between Centralia and another ironically named town, Ashland. As of 2013, 8 people still remain in Centralia. They fought hard and won a settlement against the state, allowing them to maintain ownership of their homes and live in town. They are not allowed to ever sell or pass on their houses, and upon their deaths, Pennsylvania will seize the land. Local news station WGAL visited Centralia in 2005, interviewing one of the residents named Lamar Mervine. Anchor Dick Hawksworth described Lamar as a guest in his own home. Lamar had worked in the mines. Now he refused to leave his home, which was once owned by his father, another miner. During the interview, Lamar said, this is a nice place to live. According to reports from 2023, 4 people still live there. As for the fire, it's estimated to continue burning for another 250 years. Now we're heading to Concrete City, which is about an hour away from Centralia. This was the first recording location that I'd never been to, so I was excited to document my initial reactions. Concrete City was built in 1911 by the DL&W, or the Delaware, Lackawanna, and Western Railroad. It was intended for the employees of the Truesdale Colliery, another anthracite mine. The homes were geared toward a new type of architecture known as international style. They were made entirely of concrete and constructed to look identical. There's 20 duplex houses laid out in a rectangle with a large courtyard, pool, baseball field, and walking path in the middle. The homes were rented out for $8 a month and were made up of 7 rooms: a living room, dining room, and kitchen, with 4 bedrooms upstairs in addition to an outhouse. There was a coal stove downstairs to generate heat. Only 40 of the 1,700 colliery employees were able to move into the community, and they considered themselves incredibly fortunate to do so. Those that were chosen were higher-ups in the company, and it was a requirement that their first language was English, which immediately excluded the first-generation immigrants who worked in the coal industry. This exclusivity, although a clear flaw of the community, at the time leaned into the appeal of the place, as it just made the people that could live there really happy that they were able to. Each home could be built in a single day, obviously making this new method of construction attractive and seemingly more convenient for other communities. Taken in its prime, one photograph of Concrete City shows a woman watering flowers outside one of the homes, a dog at her heels. The windows are cracked open, the house decorated with flower boxes and hanging gardens. Other photos show the children of the community sitting along the pool or swinging at the park. Concrete City was known as the Garden City of the Anthracite region, painting it as some utopia. The seemingly idyllic setting, combined with the convenience of houses that could be built in a day, made Concrete City almost too good to be true. Which, ultimately, it was. The Pennsylvania winters soon revealed how unforgivingly cold the concrete houses were. Frost would get into the homes, and former residents even recalled their clothes freezing in the upstairs closets. Mold was a major problem as well. Once a year, all of the furniture had to be removed, and the homes needed to be cleaned out with a high-pressure washer. Residents were frustrated that the property refused to install a sewer system. It would have been incredibly expensive and near impossible given how the houses were built. There weren't really any improvements at all that could be made because of how everything was set in concrete. Only 13 years after it was built, Concrete City was left abandoned. It simply was not comfortable, sanitary, or realistic to live in. Atlas Obscura claims the recreational areas of the town were haunted, as there was a young boy who drowned in the pool. While the pool is no longer there, or at least not accessible, it's just another story that goes to show that Concrete City was not this perfect place that it was made out to be, both upon its construction and to the outside world after people moved in. The Glen Alden Coal Company later purchased the land, intending to demolish the homes. However, they soon gave up after 100 sticks of dynamite proved ineffective against the concrete structures. Concrete City remains abandoned, hidden in the woods of Nanticoke, inaccessible by an unmarked path.
They really are just concrete shells, and it's hard to imagine them as homes. But they were, and I love that now we're able to come and explore them.
We encountered a few others as we explored Concrete City, navigating the buildings and muddy land. It's a popular place for explorers. In the past, it's even been used for firefighter, police, and military simulations, as well as recreational paintball events. In 1988, Concrete City was declared a historic site by the Pennsylvania Historical and Museum Commission. Abandoned places illustrate how the past persists, even in an ever-changing, ever-moving world. The people of the past can live on. They exist in the walls, the objects left behind. They can be found in the land, too, long after nature has reclaimed it. Exploring these locations is legal, although visitors are warned against going to Centralia. If you follow my example in visiting Centralia, please heed the warnings of signs that note areas with unstable ground and dangerous levels of carbon monoxide. In both locations, be safe, have fun, and respect both the remaining structures and natural environment. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. I'll be back next week with more haunting tales. Until then, stay spooky. This has been Mirrors, Horrors, History, and Hauntings, produced and hosted by Gabby Frye.